It's so good to see you again on Revenge Podium. Today, the story I'm sharing takes place in Georgia. My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 29 years old, and 3 months ago, my cousin didn't just ruin my wedding, she tried to steal it. And when I fought back, my whole family called me a monster. But here's the thing about monsters. They don't usually end up with a restraining order, a criminal record, and a family that finally sees them for who they really are. If you think a wedding can't lead to police reports, court dates, and a cousin behind bars, keep listening. Let me take you back to where this nightmare started, because context matters. My cousin Bethany is 2 years younger than me, and growing up, we were inseparable. Summer sleepovers at Grandma's house, sharing clothes even though she always stretched out my sweaters, practicing dance routines in the garage until our moms yelled at us to keep it down. She was the sister I never had, or at least, that's what I thought. The first crack in the foundation happened when I got into Emory University and she didn't. Suddenly, every family dinner became a minefield. Bethany would make comments about how I thought I was better than everyone now, how college girls forget where they come from, how I'd probably marry some snob and forget all about my real family. I brushed it off as jealousy, figured she'd grow out of it. I was wrong. When I graduated and landed a job as a graphic designer in Atlanta, making decent money for the first time in my life, Bethany's resentment went from simmering to boiling. She dropped out of community college after 1 semester, bounced between retail jobs, still lived with her parents at 27, and according to her, according to my aunt and uncle, according to half my family, the reason her life wasn't working out was because I'd somehow stolen all the luck. As if success was a pie, and I'd taken too big a slice. But I still loved her. I still invited her to girls' nights, still listened to her complain about her boss, still lent her money she never paid back. Because that's what you do, right? That's what family does. You show up, you support each other, you ignore the little red flags waving in the corner because acknowledging them feels too messy, too complicated, too real. Then I met Daniel. Daniel was everything I didn't know I needed. Kind, patient, funny in this understated way that snuck up on you. He was a civil engineer, had his life together, loved his mama, opened doors, remembered details about conversations we'd had weeks ago. We met at a friend's barbecue, started dating that summer, and by the following spring, he proposed on the beach at Tybee Island with a ring he'd saved for months to buy. I was floating. I called Bethany the same night, practically screaming into the phone. She congratulated me, said she was happy for me, asked to see pictures of the ring. At the time, I thought her voice sounded a little flat, a little forced, but I chalked it up to phone static or exhaustion. I wanted to believe the best. That was my first mistake. Planning the wedding became my entire life for the next 8 months. I had Pinterest boards, spreadsheets color-coded by vendor, a binder so thick it could double as a weapon. Daniel and I saved every spare dollar. His parents chipped in. My parents contributed what they could. We were aiming for something beautiful but manageable. About 150 guests, ceremony at a historic chapel downtown, reception at this gorgeous garden venue with string lights and magnolia trees. I asked Bethany to be a bridesmaid. Of course I did. She was family. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs I ignored. The way she'd roll her eyes whenever I talked about wedding plans. The passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes. "Must be nice to have a man who actually has a job," she'd say with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Or, "I guess some of us are just meant to be princesses, and some of us are meant to work at Target." I'd laugh it off, tell her she'd find someone too, keep the peace. Meanwhile, she was already plotting. 3 weeks before my wedding, I was at work, in the middle of a presentation for a client, when my phone started blowing up. Text after text, call after call, all from family members. I excused myself, stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. Because that kind of phone activity usually means someone died. I called my mom first. "Rachel," she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "Bethany just told us she's pregnant." My first reaction was genuine happiness. "Oh my God, that's wonderful. Who's the father? Is she—" Mom cut me off. "She says it's Daniel's baby." The world tilted. Everything went fuzzy at the edges. My hands went numb. I actually had to sit down on the floor of that corporate hallway with my back against the wall because my legs just gave out. "What?" I whispered. "She's saying she and Daniel have been seeing each other for months, that the baby is his, that you stole him from her, that she was dating him first, that you knew and you took him anyway." I couldn't breathe. "Mom, that's insane. That's a lie. Daniel and I met at Jason's barbecue. Bethany wasn't even there that day. We've been together for over a year. She's never even mentioned dating anyone named Daniel. This is—" "I know, sweetheart," Mom said, but her voice was shaking. "But she's crying. She says she has proof. Text messages, photos. Your aunt is beside herself. The whole family is in an uproar." I drove straight to Daniel's office, burst into his cubicle looking like a crazy person, demanded to know if he'd ever at any point had any kind of relationship with Bethany. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Your cousin? The one who's barely said 2 words to me at family dinners? Rachel, what are you talking about?" We spent that evening going through every text, every photo, every shred of supposed evidence Bethany was spreading around. And you know what we found? Photoshopped images, screenshots with his name edited over someone else's. Text conversations that were clearly fabricated because the timestamps didn't even make sense. One of the photos she claimed was them together was literally a picture of Daniel and me that she'd cropped herself into using some app. It was elaborate. It was calculated. It was absolutely unhinged. But here's the thing about lies, even obvious ones. Once they're out there, once they're circulating through a family group chat, once your aunt is sobbing on the phone to your grandmother saying her daughter is pregnant with your fiancé's baby, the truth becomes just another opinion. I called Bethany directly, demanded she tell everyone the truth, begged her to stop this nightmare before it destroyed everything. She didn't even try to sound convincing. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said sweetly. "Daniel and I were together first. You knew I was seeing someone named Daniel. You stole him, Rachel. You've always been jealous of me." "Jealous of you?" I was almost laughing because the absurdity was too much. "Bethany, I have the receipts. I have our first date on my calendar. I have photos time-stamped from before you're claiming this even started. You're lying and you know you're lying." She hung up on me. Within 48 hours, half my family wasn't speaking to me. My aunt sent me a vicious message calling me a backstabbing snake, saying I'd always thought I was better than Bethany, that this was proof of the kind of person I really was. My uncle called my dad, said if I went through with this wedding, it would tear the family apart. Cousins I'd grown up with were suddenly giving me the cold shoulder, posting vague things on social media about fake people and karma. And Bethany was playing the heartbroken victim to perfection. I sent out a group message with screenshots, with proof, with a detailed timeline showing exactly why her story made no logical sense. Some people apologized. Most people just went quiet. Didn't want to get involved, didn't want to choose sides, figured it was a she said situation even though one side had evidence and the other had Photoshop. 2 weeks before my wedding, Bethany made her final move. I came home from work to find my apartment door unlocked. Not just unlocked, open. Like someone had walked out and didn't even bother closing it behind them. My heart was in my throat as I stepped inside, half expecting to find the place ransacked, robbed, destroyed. What I found was worse. My wedding dress was gone. The custom gown I'd spent months designing with a seamstress, the one that had cost me nearly $3,000, the dress hanging in my closet wrapped in protective covering. Gone. My wedding binder, with every vendor contact, every payment receipt, every detail I'd spent 8 months organizing, gone. The backup hard drive where I'd saved all my wedding photos, the engagement shoot, the design files for our invitations, gone. And sitting on my kitchen counter like a calling card was Bethany's lipstick. The exact shade she always wore, bright red, impossible to miss. I called the police immediately, filed a report for breaking and entering for theft. The officer taking my statement looked skeptical when I explained about the wedding dress, like maybe this was just some family drama that didn't need to involve law enforcement. But when I showed him the security camera footage from my building's hallway, his whole demeanor changed. Clear as day, there was Bethany, letting herself in with a key I'd given her months ago for emergencies, leaving 20 minutes later with a garment bag over her shoulder, a box under her arm, looking directly at the camera with this smile that made my blood run cold. "Well," the officer said slowly, "that's definitely burglary." Within hours, detective work revealed that Bethany had also contacted half my wedding vendors, claiming to be me, trying to cancel services, reroute deliveries, change final details. She'd called my photographer saying the wedding was off. She'd emailed my caterer with dietary restrictions that would have ruined the entire menu. She'd even tried to cancel my venue booking, claiming a family emergency. The photographer got suspicious and called me directly to confirm. That's the only reason it didn't all fall apart. When the police showed up at Bethany's door with a warrant, you know what they found? My wedding dress hanging in her closet. The tag still on it, my name literally written on the seamstress's label inside. My wedding binder on her desk, with sticky notes where she'd been planning her own ceremony, on the same date as mine, at a courthouse, wearing my dress. She'd been planning to have a wedding the same day as me in my dress, telling everyone that Daniel had finally chosen the right woman. Except she didn't have a groom, didn't even have a boyfriend. The whole pregnancy story? A lie. She wasn't pregnant, never had been. It was just a way to blow up my relationship, to make me look like the villain, to ruin what I'd built. At the police station, Bethany's story fell apart faster than wet tissue paper. She admitted she'd made up the pregnancy, admitted she'd never been with Daniel, admitted she'd taken my things, but she still tried to play victim, crying about how I'd always gotten everything, how it wasn't fair, how she deserved to be happy too. My aunt and uncle begged me not to press charges. "She's family," my aunt sobbed. "She made a mistake. She's struggling, Rachel. She needs help, not jail." I looked at my aunt, this woman who'd helped raise me, who'd braided my hair and made me snacks after school, and I said the hardest sentence I've ever had to say. She didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. 100 little choices that led to breaking into my home and stealing my wedding dress. And if I don't press charges, what's she going to do next time? Because there will be a next time. The family fracture was immediate and brutal. Half the family stood by me, horrified by what Bethany had done. The other half accused me of being vindictive, of ruining a young woman's life over a dress, of choosing revenge over family. But here's what they didn't understand. It was never about the dress. It was about the fact that she looked me in the eye and lied. It was about her weaponizing family bonds to manipulate and destroy. It was about her thinking she could take whatever she wanted from my life, and I'd just let her, because we shared a grandmother. Bethany was charged with burglary, criminal trespassing, and theft. She pleaded guilty as part of a deal, got probation, community service, mandatory therapy, and a restraining order that meant she couldn't come within 500 feet of me or Daniel. My wedding went forward 2 weeks later, exactly as planned. Smaller than expected because a chunk of family refused to come. But the people who were there, the ones who showed up, who stood with us, who celebrated our love despite the chaos, those are the people who mattered. Daniel's vows made me cry so hard I could barely say mine back. He promised to always believe me, always fight for us, always see me for who I really am. And I promised the same right back. My dad walked me down the aisle, and halfway there he whispered, "I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." The reception was perfect. The string lights glowed like tiny stars, the magnolia trees swayed in the evening breeze, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. Daniel and I had our first dance to the song we'd picked out a year ago, and I remember thinking, this is worth it. All of it. Every tear, every police report, every family member who chose to walk away. Worth it for this moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. Our honeymoon in Charleston was exactly what we needed. A week of sleeping in, walking on the beach, eating at restaurants where nobody knew our story, where we were just a couple in love. No drama, no chaos, no family expecting us to explain ourselves, just US. But coming home meant facing reality again. In the months after the wedding, the family dynamics shifted like tectonic plates. My aunt stopped speaking to me entirely, cut me out of her life like I'd never existed. My uncle sends awkward Christmas cards, but we don't talk. Some cousins drifted away, choosing Bethany's side because it was easier than admitting she'd been wrong. But my parents? They started seeing things differently, started asking questions they'd never asked before, started noticing patterns they'd excused for years. The way Bethany always played victim, always found someone else to blame, always expected everyone else to clean up her messes. We enabled her, my mom admitted one Sunday over brunch. We made excuses. We told you to be the bigger person so many times that we forgot to ask her to be a decent one. That conversation, it healed something in me I didn't even know was broken. For years, I'd felt like I was crazy for being hurt by Bethany's behavior. For years, I'd wondered if maybe I was too sensitive, too selfish, too unwilling to just let things go. Hearing my own mother admit that they'd been wrong, that they'd prioritized keeping the peace over keeping me safe, it validated every feeling I'd been told to ignore. My relationship with my parents isn't perfect now. There's still some resentment buried deep, still moments where I remember them telling me to invite Bethany to dress fittings even after she'd made cruel comments, moments where they chose her feelings over mine because her tears were louder than my quiet pain. But we're rebuilding, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. I'm not going to lie, there's still pain. There are still moments where I see a photo from childhood, me and Bethany with our arms around each other, both grinning. And I grieve for what could have been. But I don't regret pressing charges, not for a single second, because setting that boundary, standing up and saying, no, you don't get to destroy my life and face zero consequences, that changed everything. It changed how my family saw me. It changed how I saw myself. It taught me that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. Bethany finished her probation last month. I heard through the grapevine that she's working at a call center now, still living with her parents, still telling anyone who will listen that I overreacted, that it was just a dress. That family should forgive. But forgiveness without accountability is just enabling, and I'm done being anyone's doormat even if they share my last name. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this? Family is supposed to be your safe place, not your punishment. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Loyalty doesn't mean letting someone steal your joy, your belongings, your life, just because you happen to grow up together. Real family, whether they're blood relatives or people you choose, they celebrate your wins. They don't sabotage them. They don't weaponize your vulnerabilities. They don't break into your home because you dared to be happy. If someone in your life was standing where I stood, if your own cousin stole your wedding dress and tried to destroy your relationship because they couldn't stand to see you happy, what would you tell them to do? Would you really ask them to forgive and forget for the sake of keeping the peace? Or is there a line that, once crossed, means there's simply no going back? Our team at Revenge Podium is dedicated to crafting meaningful, emotional, story-based scripts that keep viewers engaged while still feeling real. All of our revenge stories are entirely fictional and created with the goal of sharing life lessons and positive educational messages with our audience. This script highlights the importance of protecting your boundaries, showing viewers that standing up for yourself, even against family, is sometimes the only path to peace. It also teaches that enabling bad behavior in the name of family loyalty ultimately hurts everyone involved, and that real consequences can lead to real change. Through this family revenge story, viewers are encouraged to reflect on accountability, self-respect, and what healthy family relationships should truly look like.